So we've chatted at length there about things to do in the off season. We've chatted about things to do in the winter that can set you up and prepare you for a successful next season. But part of that, of course, isn't just what we do during the off season, it's how we plan for the next season. So planning for the next season often is a extension of the things that have worked well this season. But for many, unfortunately, if we've missed our goals, maybe it's about change, maybe it's about evolution and moving forward. But one of my key messages with this is that it has to be a collaboration. There are still many coaches out there who sort of are quite dictatorial and tyrannical. It's my way or the highway. And I guess certain athletes like that approach. They like to just be explicitly told what to do. And that sort of still resonates from the old school sort of elite stuff. But to be honest, even at the elite stuff today, most of it should be a collaboration. It's guided or led maybe by the coach, but actually the athlete is vitally important in helping to shape that. So I spend a lot of time with my athletes, really trying to collaborate with them, offering options, giving advice and pathways that might work, and letting them guide where they want that to go. And therefore, instead of me dragging them along or pushing them along, what it might be is I'm more like almost just letting them move forward themselves. And my job is to control the boundaries of what we're doing to stay on track and get to where we need to be. So that's difficult, obviously, if you take someone or you start to work with a new athlete or a new coach, depending which side of the fence you're sitting on. Trust takes time, knowing how to collaborate. I collaborate differently with different athletes because of personality, etc. So it takes time and it's difficult, but it's vital as far as I'm concerned for it to work. It's the same way when I treat people, it's all a collaborative approach. So I thought that maybe one of the easiest ways to give an example of this is to just give a case study. So this is an athlete I worked with a couple of seasons ago and came to see me, had been the previous few years had basically been a combination of self-coached using downloadable plans. I think he'd used an AI app for one plan, something like Runner or something like that, and then previous coaches as well. And when he came to see me, a relatively successful, achievable athlete, had done lots of big ultra runs, decent time for his previous 100-mile best. But these results and performances were outliers. What happened more often than he wanted to was not making it to the start line, not making it to the finish line, or just finishing feeling really sort of weak, unconfident, unsure about the performance. And when he came to me, one of the biggest things he'd said was, I just feel like I've lost direction a little bit with everything. And my goal for a couple of years, he wanted to go sub 21 hours for 100 miles. In the same race that he'd done the 23:17. So he had a sort of staple set target, and the variables were not going to change. But his approach needed to. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go into what we did with him. I'm not going to go into the training plan as such today. What I wanted to do is more about the bigger picture thought processes we went through the analysis of tell me about your background, tell me what you've done before, tell me what we need to do. So these might be, for whoever's watching, whether you're a coach or an athlete, these might be topics, I guess, would be the big things, the big headings of things to consider and why. So what we found with this athlete, and I loved his last statement here, okay? He reported that I feel like I've been ground down by the grind. So that constant slog of trying to be better and focusing on races and training and being rigid to this training plan had just lost motivation. We had nothing sinister or serious in any shape or form, but we had some low-grade injuries that were niggling and hanging around just because we were doing too much, too hard, too often, and there wasn't enough sort of rest and recovery. That had led to some fatigue. Had done what most athletes do these days, had gone so down the rabbit hole of tunnel vision around the tracking of data, following metrics. He had reams of data to share when we were chatting first, and he was tracking everything but nothing, and usual mistake, which I'm sure lots of people can recognize. Now, when we first chatted, and I think this is important, I know It's difficult if you're working online with people. This was a local athlete to me, actually. A lot of my athletes are online coached, and I would try to replicate this online as much as we could. But we met for a coffee. We met for a coffee in a coffee shop, and we chatted for about an hour and a half. And that's all it was a chat. Everything was discussed and sort of aired and thrashed about. And then we unpicked the relevant stuff from it. And there was plenty of things that I felt straight away I wanted to say, right, that wasn't right, that wasn't right, that wasn't right. We should do this, this, and this. But I appreciate the emotional attachment that athletes have to their training and their preparation. We've got an identity sometimes of being the triathlete, the cyclist, the runner, etc. So to storm in and just go, rip it all up, start again, or you don't need to do this, you need to do this, is tough. So I think it's a really important thing that we drip feed some of these suggestions, that we appreciate the time needed for change. Sometimes you need to plant a seed, go away, let them cultivate that seed themselves, and then come back and discuss it. Because some of it can be quick, instant sort of feedback and reaction, but a lot of it, like it says there, needs deep reflection. A lot of it needs someone to go away and soul search a little bit to understand themselves, or even you need to have some sort of motivational interviewing style almost to be able to have a skill set that can elicit that information from people. And that's difficult. And it's sort of, I'm going off on a tangent now a little bit, but it's sort of some of my bugbears with things like some of, the everywhere you turn now, someone's a coach. Lots of them don't have any experience other than being a runner themselves or an athlete themselves. Some of them have got a bit of an influencer following, so they just decide they're going to become coaches, or they've gone off and done some course, but they haven't gained too much experience to support it yet. And those are the bits for me when people are writing plans or coaching people where they perhaps seem to be protruding or projecting more skill and experience than they might actually have at the moment. Fancy websites, or all of this type of stuff. That's where I'm always concerned sometimes. Have they got the skills and experience to be able to build that relationship? It's not just about writing the plan. It's not just about putting something on paper that someone can do. It's about understanding the athlete, fostering that relationship with them, being able to know how to prod and poke appropriately to get information out of someone that produces progress in someone. So just be cautious of that if you're out there looking for coaches, or you're a coach who thinks maybe, I'm doing really well because I've got a couple of people to some PBs. Coaching, just like therapy for me, is so different. There's so many more layers to the onion. Anyway, I digress on that one. So back on track with this case study. So I think one thing to me that is worth deeper diving with athletes in this period of the off season and planning is, what does success really look like to you? Now, most athletes will give a really quick answer of sub 21 hours, qualifying for Kona, getting in my, winning my local 10K, whatever it might be. It's always an objective goal, and that's fine. We need objective goals. But sometimes it might be subjective. It might be something like, I want to consistently train 5 times a week for 5 months. It might be that I don't want to pick up the injuries at the same time every year. There's something else. I don't want to be so fatigued in race week, that type of stuff. It might be more of an emotional subjective goal. I don't want to get stressed and irritated in the last couple of months of my training block. I don't want to feel stale by the end. And of course, I've chatted about this on social media a lot. It might be about defining anti-goals. What are the things that we don't want to do? Okay, so it might be something like every Christmas I train too hard because I have a bit more time, or I'm overeating, so I'm overtraining, and that's a period we're trying to have easy or something. It might be that every year I plan to do 2 strength sessions a week, but it falls away by February. So the anti-goal would be, don't not do your strength work. Or it might be, don't add extra volumes to your sessions. It might be, don't not think about nutrition the night before a big session. Those type of things. They aren't sexy things here because they're not things on paper that someone's then going to go and do. But these are our pillars. These are our foundations, the things that, so anytime someone then comes, can we do this in our plan? Or I'm thinking of entering this race, or I'm thinking of changing to this. you come back to this and you go, look what our pillars were, look what the foundations of our season planning involved. Do they meet these criteria? If they don't, we don't want to be doing them. If they do, fine. Or we might need to reassess and change our pillars if something happens and we need to change. I don't think athletes, uncoached athletes, often do this in any depth. It's always about the objective single data goal of X distance, X time, X speed, or a podium finish, or whatever it might be. And then within the planning phase, okay, because of some of these things, now these are exclusive to this person. They might not apply to everyone, but I'd argue they should be considerations for everyone in this winter block. So for me, really trying to, the structured training is obviously there. There are blocks of training. We're going to be explicit in what we're trying to do in each session. But for other periods, it could be holidays, it could be Christmas, it could be busy periods at work or whatever it might be. It might just be random selected bits every fourth block, something like that. We have more of an unstructured approach. Now, that doesn't mean it's do what you want. That's not chaotic, just crack on, go and do whatever you want without following a plan just to have a release, because we're doomed to failure when those things tend to kick in. What it generally means is it's less mental cognition and emotional cognition needed to follow the plan. So it could just be, if you're away for 10 days, it's 2 to 3 sessions of this to this intensity, this to this duration. If you do them, great. If you don't worry. We'll factor in the week when you come back that accommodates both outcomes. But it gives you a bit of freedom. And I often like to do that to people, because I tend to catch up with my athletes on a month-to-month basis, formally and informally as often as they need. But we'll sort of not only plan the next block, we might be planning a few blocks ahead. So I might have someone who goes, I've got a big project in work, I have to travel overseas, and that month's a concern, even though it's 3 months away. Okay, we'll look to do these in the first few blocks coming up to that month, and then we can have quite an unstructured week there if you want. Brill. And we'll fine-tune the details later on, but that's what the plan will be. There is absolutely a time in everyone's plan where a real data-driven, metric-driven plan is great. The more specific your goals, perhaps the shorter your distances, higher the level of performance you're looking at doing objectively, then the more specific that needs to be. But there's also a real baseline requirement for things to just be driven by feel. And with an athlete like this one, where there was a real emotional toll on their performances previously, that line that was resonating of ground down by the grind. So it was, how can I release some of the pressure of the grind? How can I make the grind less of a sort of burden for them somehow? So sometimes going off things like rate of perceived exertion within sessions is much easier way to manage your training than this must be this speed, this distance, this intensity, this heart rate, whatever it might be, this wattage on the bike. It might be, and with this person, it was just like, 90 minutes to 120 minutes at 3 to 5 out of 10 effort, rather than specific distances, etc. And then you've got this flexibility and freedom. Of course, they overlap and equate, but this worked really well for this athlete. And then when we need to put the hard-lined, deliberate sessions in when they're needed, they're easier to absorb and the grind becomes a little bit easier. But of course, this is a negotiated thing because this has changed to a lot of athletes. This is something they might need, but feel they don't want, or is uncomfortable change for them. So it has to be negotiated, blended, sometimes a bit of both, and then ranged. So, 90 to 120 minutes, for example, 3 to 5 out of 10. I'm giving you some control. I'm giving you the flexibility that you have some say in how much you do and you drive these sessions, but I'm controlling the boundaries of what's too little. It's enough to keep us moving forward. It's not too much to push us over the edge, and you're in control of those sessions. Now, this could be a whole season approach for some, or it could just be a little microcycle type of approach for some people. Coupled with this, of course, then, and this fits into that part of the theory behind that last bit, was that the rest and recovery are deliberate, unessential, and ring-fenced. So many times when athletes struggle to get through a season or fail to meet their goals, rest and recovery are a reaction. They're a knee-jerk reaction to things not going well, races not going well, fatigue, injury, etc. They have to be intentional and planned. What people need to change a lot of the time is their mindset, okay? You don't need an easy week every 4 weeks, for example. It might be if your low grade training is there, it might be a day every 4 weeks. It might be a weekend every 6 weeks, and then in heavy training, it might be the fourth week of a 4 week block is a bit easier, for example. But we plot them, we plan them, we know what's there. When the grind is hard, look, we've only got 2 more weeks of really grafting through this, and then we've got a recovery week, or we can change it if we need to. So sometimes I'll extend recovery periods. Sometimes I'll reduce it from the plan. Sometimes we will put something in as a reaction because we need it. We're more fatigued from that race than we thought we were, or that big weekend, so we'll ease off a bit this. And it's all about that communications. If we use the training to feel, and rather than the specific data-driven sessions all the time, then it has a nice symbiosis. These two live well together because they bounce off each other really nicely. And of course, and this is vital for this person, most people think of rest and recovery from the physical point of view, and of course that's key. But actually, for this guy, one of the things that jumped off the page when we chatted was this emotional toll and burden the training was taking on him. So if I can release that a little bit, then great. And we actually planned around a lot of family stuff because that was periods where he felt stressed, trying to force this training in and around commitments with the family and trying to be there. So I mentioned planning them deliberately. Sometimes these might be real breaks. I even do it with my athletes in rehab sometimes. I'll say, over the next 10 days, everyone you just stopped in your rehab, which seems counterintuitive, of course, but I understand it's a mental and emotional drain and commitment to keep ploughing through with things, even if they're essential, training no different. But let's have a week off. Go and do something fun. Go do something else. Do nothing if you want to. We need that reset. And it'll be uncomfortable, and you probably will feel a bit twitchy in the week off, or half a week off, weekend off, whatever it is. But we'll come back stronger, and the longevity of our season will be better because we're taking these periods to recharge. So one of my attitudes is this sort of life first, training second approach. I think that's often the biggest stressor for most people. So what are the things that will stress you the most in your life because of the training that needs to go on? Can we caveat it? So family holidays, Christmases, birthdays, all of those type of things. Okay, let's adjust the training around it. And the secret is that to be able to enjoy those easier periods to accommodate family, we normally have need to bookended the appropriate amount of training before or after so that you feel you're still doing enough. And then just accepting that at some points in the year, this is less negotiable than others. So let's say you've got a wedding or a wedding anniversary or something, a family gathering, friends gathering, and it's 4 or 5 weeks before your major race of the season. It might be that we get out early and do something beforehand. It might be that I've got a athlete this weekend actually who he is off for a family. Is it a weekend or a week? It's a week. He's got a family week in I think it's a B&B, Airbnb type chalet type thing in North Wales, and he's traveling across from Manchester. So he is going to cycle there and cycle back to be able to enjoy the week off in the middle, and has negotiated with his wife that, yeah, cool, you spend half a day cycling there and cycling back, and that means we get you for the week. So there's those negotiations that can be made. But there might be periods where this is tougher and harder to manage than other periods in the year based on where we are in the race calendar. Finally, on these, I think the key things to think about with this is that the perfect plan never exists. And even if you were to scientifically prepare the perfect plan, we're dealing with people, and people are reactive and spontaneous and adaptable, and therefore the plans need to be. We are, beings that have emotions and physical abilities. So our plan needs to work on being progressively better, not perfect, and then things fit better together. We have to be flexible and adaptable so we don't rip the plan up and the house burns down. We never have to start again, but it has to bend. It has to sort of move a bit. I often refer to some of my training plans as bamboo training plans. They'll bend happily, but they won't break. So a plan can deviate and flex, but come back to its original form pretty quickly. Now, if I'm doing my job right, I empower my athletes to be able to make those flexible adaptations themselves because I've given them this control of it. Sometimes it needs to be more coach driven per se. And of course, the key skill in anything, whether you're dealing as a therapist or a coach or whatever, is communication. None of this stuff works unless there are such good communications. So, for me, my athletes all have open access whenever they want it. There's no tiered system. You can't, I'll reply within 24 hours or 36 hours based on what you pay me. Everybody gets the same for me because you need it. If you're trying to get in touch with me, you need it. And if I want to encourage my athletes to have that confidence in getting in touch, I have to be accessible and available. So communication is everything, and that's a two-way street, but it should be led and managed by the coach, facilitating and fostering that right environment. So that's not a deep dive into what I did for this athlete, but it's some of the things in this off-season winter plan when we started to work together that are key considerations beyond, tell me about your training week, what's your current volume, when do you prefer doing your long sessions? They're vital bits to plan and shape the sessions, but that shouldn't be the things you're looking at now. It should be the bigger picture stuff.